Hi everyone, my name is Lauren Stoll. I am in your social work supervision class and I'm going to be giving a presentation on cultural competence in social work supervision. So this is a Prezi I created. And the first slide is the table of contents. So first we're going to talk about what culture is. Next, we're going to talk about what is cultural competency in social work. Then some perspectives on what cultural competency is and what that should look like. And then some implications for us as social work supervisors possibly in the future. So the first slide is what is culture. So I've gathered through my research that culture is really an umbrella term and that encompasses important aspects of an individual's identity, like things like race, class, gender, sexual orientation, and ability. But certainly those are not the only things that culture encompasses, and we're going to talk more about what are those other parts of culture. So in social work, cultural competency, according to the NASW, it refers to the process by which individuals and systems respond respectfully and effectively to people of all cultures, languages, classes, races, ethnic backgrounds, religions, and other diversity factors in a manner that recognizes, affirms, and values the worth of individuals, families, and communities, and protects and preserves the dignity of each. So kind of lengthy there, but I think it's helpful that the NASW gives us a definition like that to start working with. But the NASW also says in the Code of Ethics that social workers should obtain education about and seek to understand the nature of social diversity and oppression with respect to race, ethnicity, national origin, color, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, age, marital status, political belief, religion, immigration status, and mental or physical disability. So the reason that I really like what the NASW is saying here is that they're addressing some aspects of culture that I think personally go unnoticed a lot. When we think of cultural competency, we tend to not think about things like gender expression or political belief, immigration status, or sometimes ability. And so I really appreciated that the NASW was making a point to point these things out to us and draw our attention to them. So next, something I thought in one of the texts that I was reading that was important was this idea that cultural competency in social work is not a function only of what transpires between the worker and the client, but also a product of societal organization and context. So I'm on the macro track, so I thought this was important and interesting to me to think about, cultural competency not only being with an interaction between one social worker and one client, but really an overarching concept that can be applied with communities and institutions and organizations. So in other words, social workers who want to be culturally competent need to go beyond awareness and sensitivity and start understanding things like privilege and power and oppression and how those affect our clients and certainly their well-being. One article I read that I thought was really interesting, it gives a perspective on cultural competency, was called Fundamental Contradictions in Cultural Competence, that talked about how cultural competence and that idea really contradicts some of the primary social work values. It listed several contradictions, and I'm going to talk about two of them. One was this idea of knowing about cultures. So instead of adopting a position of knowing about the client, modern social work practice stresses learning from the client, meaning listening and giving prominence to the client's story, a narrative that is unique. So I thought this was interesting because we all want to be culturally competent and think that we know about cultures, but at the same time, each client has a unique identity and a very unique story and narrative, and it's important for us to also recognize that while we may want to know about cultures, we most importantly want to know about our individual clients. And secondly, this idea of collective identities. So increasing attention to these large categories like racial groups or religious groups, but also respecting individual identities of our clients, going back to those individual differences. Someone may not identify with many aspects of a group that we assume that they belong to, or it may even be truly a group that they belong to, but they may just not identify with many aspects of that group. So from that same text that I referenced earlier, I thought this quote was good. While ethnic information may provide some sense of broad themes, it can also produce simplistic overgeneralizations about groups of people that actually perpetuate incorrect stereotypes and support prejudicial attitudes. So while we're trying to strive for cultural competence, we want to be really aware that we're not doing this, that we're not just taking these sweeping overgeneralizations, these broad statements about groups of people, and applying them to our clients in a way that might perpetuate some incorrect stereotypes. And this could really affect building rapport with clients if we think that, we may think that we are well-intentioned and that we are trying to be culturally competent, but it could have some serious negative effects on the client if they feel like we are being prejudiced or holding some bad stereotypes. So now I want to talk about what does all of this mean for us as social work supervisors. So in our text, actually, it says that cultural competency requires regular assessment of the organizational climate for diversity among both clients and staff and making changes in policy, structures, and so forth as they are indicated. So our role as a supervisor is different in promoting cultural competency in that we are dealing more with the organizational climate and the way our organization is laid out, making sure that all of our policies and structures really promote a positive and diverse climate and workspace. And next, the NASW also says that for supervisors, this idea of cultural competency involves actively recruiting multi-ethnic staff and including cultural competence requirements in job descriptions and performance, and promoting measures as well as developing performance measures to assess culturally competent practice. I thought this was just an interesting way to look at how to be a culturally competent supervisor because you're not always directly interacting with clients, but you are directly interacting with your staff, and it is your responsibility to make sure that job descriptions and the climate of your workspace is culturally competent. So next, just a little bit of summary of that is that as social work supervisors, it's important to be culturally competent, but also to allow our clients, as well as the people we're supervising, to be the experts of their own experiences. We can be culturally competent and also have an openness to learning from our clients and supervisees about their cultures and individual identities. So always keeping that in mind. Again, for this implication for social work supervisors, there were two more quotes I thought were good. One from a text saying that social workers practicing in multicultural, multiracial North America need to take into account the variety of characteristics that all persons embody in their cultural and ethnic identities, both clients and workers, and learn how these diverse aspects are relevant in the work with each client. So always going back to those individual identities and always thinking about how does not only someone else's identity and culture, but my identity and culture play into the work that I'm doing. Also from our textbook, a quote that says, "A manager who possesses cultural competency employs a congruent set of behaviors, skills, attitudes, and policies that enable the organization and its diverse staff members to work together effectively." So cultural competency really promotes a collaboration between staff and supervisors and clients. And if we can all work toward more solid cultural competency and more, I think, self-awareness, it's going to be good for the organization as a whole and not just for the clients. So last, I just wanted to talk about where do we begin? So as students who may be social work supervisors in the future, what can we do to make sure that we're being culturally competent? So I put together a couple of tips. The first one is just to start with you. So spend some quality time in self-reflection, learn about yourself as a cultural being, and bring awareness to your own culture and how this might affect your work as a supervisor. And I think that can be a really good starting place. But also, don't make assumptions about your supervisees and about their cultures. So for example, you can ask about preferred pronouns of your staff members before referring to someone new as he or she. And you can also set example of doing this by introducing yourself with your preferred pronouns. So if you're meeting a new staff member, you can say, "Hi, my name is Lauren and I go by feminine pronouns," and that will set a safe way for other staff members to feel like they can also do that. The last tip is just to get to know your supervisees. So as a culturally competent supervisor, it's important to set aside intentional time to get to know your staff one-on-one in a professional way, of course, but allow an opportunity for them to explain their culture and background and their identity to you, understanding that it's complex and individual, but also allowing space for them not to share this information. So this isn't stuff that they need to share with you, only if they feel comfortable, and also don't probe. And so there are my references. I hope that these tips and this information was helpful and useful. I know that I learned a lot being able to do this research, so I'm hoping that this